So as we get to the end of the Clone Wars, it's time to ask the age-old question, what about the droid attack on the Wookiees? Today we're going to give some context to the Battle of Kashyyyk. I'm Colin, and this is Sci-Fi Deep Dive. Remember, if you enjoyed this video, to head down below and hit that subscribe button. So the Battle of Kashyyyk is one of those pivotal moments at the end of the war when the Republic and the Confederacy were facing off in the midst of battle when the order to execute Order 66 was given. It is part of that montage, but did have some scenes prior to that, and there's actually quite a bit to talk about when we're discussing the strategies used during that engagement, but I figured today we'll talk more about where Kashyyyk sits in the grand scheme of things and why this battle took place. So let's start with where Kashyyyk sits on the CIS versus Republic side of things. Well, unsurprisingly, Kashyyyk is a member world of the Galactic Republic. It has been a long-standing member of the Republic and has been around for a while. That being said, Kashyyyk has been attempting to remain neutral in the conflict, mostly due to local squabbles with nearby races, most notably the Trandoshans, who were allied with the Separatists. As such, the Wookiees had a vested interest in staying neutral to keep their planet from becoming a battlefield, which would make them vulnerable to attacks from their nearby rivals. That being said, Kashyyyk sits at a very strategically important spot, the intersection of four major hyperspace lanes that are frequently traveled by both factions in both military operations and civilian operations across the galaxy. This makes Kashyyyk a crucial trade world for either faction. On top of that, this crossroads of hyperspace lanes leads directly into what would become known as the Foundries of the Confederacy, a cluster of factory worlds that were producing most of the Separatist war equipment, and that had quickly become targets for Republic forces, surging into Separatist territory during the Outer Rim sieges. Seizing Kashyyyk would cut off Republic forces' access to that region of the galaxy and allow the Separatists to better defend their factories, which are now crucial to their ongoing war effort. On top of that, Kashyyyk is home to a major hyperspace communications relay used for the HoloNet, which could be used by either faction to disrupt communications for their opposition, and could lead to some minor perks in battle, and the Separatists were under pressure from the Trandoshans to seize Kashyyyk so that they could use the world for their own means. So the Separatists had a lot of pressure on them to simply take this world and hold it, and the Separatists would eventually do that during the later days of the war in a last-ditch effort to preserve their factories and hopefully prolong their ability to stay afloat as a faction, and perhaps even save them from the brink of death the CIS finds itself at. The end result would be a massive Separatist invasion of Kashyyyk with the intention of seizing the planet and cutting off the Republic access to those hyperspace lanes, that region of space, and that HoloNet relay. The Separatist invasion would be backed by a Trade Federation fleet, which was still supposedly neutral, which just happened to carry out a blockade of Kashyyyk at that time, that would allow Separatist forces to sneak onto the planet, establish a foothold, and begin carrying out ground operations. Ground operations we see when Republic forces would later arrive on the world to protect the Wookiees. The Battle of Kashyyyk is just a perfect representation of the Republic's stance during the Clone Wars. A lot of the Republic's position during the Clone Wars was simply defending local forces against a much larger, much more capable Separatist military force, which would simply come in and sweep aside any local resistance were it not for the arrival of clone troopers who were better at combat than many local militias. Upon the arrival of Separatist forces, the Wookiees themselves did have a substantial defensive force available at their disposal. They were a fairly capable military faction in their system, and were more than able to defend themselves, but against this number of battle droids, especially with a Trade Federation fleet in orbit, the Separatists were looking at a pretty easy win, all things considered, before the arrival of Republic troops. But these Republic troops working together with the Wookiees would tip the balance of power in that system in favor of the Republic and a now Republic-allied Wookiee government that believed that neutrality was not really an option, and at that point, they were invaded by the Separatists. Neutrality wasn't an option. So when Ki-Adi-Mundi mentions in the Jedi Council chambers, what about the attack on the Wookiees, he is specifically talking about Separatist forces landing on Kashyyyk. Not necessarily the attack we see later on in the movie where they're assaulting Wookiee positions, but simply droid forces amassing on Kashyyyk for a much larger military operation on that world. The Battle of Kashyyyk comes on the heels of the beginning of the collapse of the CIS. At this point, the Separatist power structure is in chaos. Count Dooku is dead, and General Grievous has assumed political and military control. If you'd like to learn about the process in which Grievous used to sort of seize control and discuss maybe whether or not that counts as a coup, I'll leave a link up here to my video on that. And I'd like you to let me know down in the comments, if Republic forces hadn't arrived prior to the Separatist attack on the Wookiee villages, do you think they would have been able to defend themselves, or do you think they really needed that Republic force to hold off this Separatist advance? And if you have anything else you'd like to see me cover in Star Wars, you can let me know down below in the comments. Last but not least, if you enjoyed this video, head down below, hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell icon so you get notified when I upload new videos. So for Sci-Fi Deep Dive, I'm Colin, and I will see you next time.